The Spring and Autumn period was a period in Chinese history from approximately 771 to 476 BC, which corresponds roughly to the first half of the Eastern Zhou dynasty. The period's name derives from the Spring and Autumn Annals, a chronicle of the state of Lu between 722 and 479 BC, which tradition associates with Confucius. Background: during the Spring and Autumn period, China's feudal system of Fengzhan became largely irrelevant. The Zhou dynasty kings held nominal power, but had real control over only a small royal domain centered on their capital Luri near modern-day Luoyang. During the early part of the Zhou dynasty period, royal relatives and generals had been given control over fiefdoms in an effort to maintain Zhou authority over vast territory. As the power of the Zhou kings waned, these fiefdoms became increasingly independent states. The most important feudal princes came together in regular conferences where they decided important matters, such as military expeditions against foreign groups or against offending nobles. During these conferences, one vassal leader was sometimes declared hegemon and given leadership over the armies of all the Zhou states. As the era continued, larger and more powerful states annexed or claimed suzerainty over smaller ones. By the 6th century BC, most small states had disappeared and just a few large and powerful principalities dominated China. Some southern states, such as Chu and Wu, claimed independence from the Zhou, who undertook wars against some of them. Amid the interstate power struggles, internal conflict was also rife. 6 elite landholding families waged war on each other inside Jin. Political enemies set about eliminating the Chen family in Qi, and the legitimacy of the rulers was often challenged in civil wars by various royal family members in Qin and Chu. Once all these powerful rulers had firmly established themselves within their respective dominions, the bloodshed focused more fully on interstate conflict in the Warring States period, which began in 403 BC when the 3 remaining elite families in Jin, Zhao, Wei and Han partitioned the state. Early Spring and Autumn. Court moves east. After the Zhou capital was sacked by the Marquis of Shen and the Quanrong barbarians, the Zhou moved the capital east from the now desolated Zhongzhou in Haojing near modern Xian to Chengzhou in the Yellow River Valley. The Zhou royalty was then closer to its main supporters, particularly Jin and Zheng. The Zhou royal family had much weaker authority and relied on lords from these vassal states for protection, especially during their flight to the eastern capital. In Chengzhou, Prince Yi Jiu was crowned by his supporters as King Ping. However, with the Zhou domain greatly reduced to Chengzhou and nearby areas, the court could no longer support the 6 army groups it had in the past. Zhou kings had to request help from powerful vassal states for protection from raids and for resolution of internal power struggles. The Zhou court would never regain its original authority. Instead, it was relegated to being merely a figurehead of the feudal states. Though the king de jure retained the mandate of heaven, the title held little actual power. With the decline of Zhou power, the Yellow River drainage basin was divided into hundreds of small, autonomous states, most of them consisting of a single city, though a handful of multi-city states, particularly those on the periphery, had power and opportunity to expand outward. A total of 148 states are mentioned in the chronicles for this period, 128 of which were absorbed by the 4 largest states by the end of the period. Shortly after the royal families moved to Chengzhou, a hierarchical alliance system arose where the Zhou king would give the title of hegemon to the leader of the state with the most powerful military. The hegemon was obligated to protect both the weaker Zhou states and the Zhou royalty from the intruding non-Zhou peoples. The northern Dai, the southern Man, the eastern Yi, and the western Rong. This political framework retained the Fengzhan power structure, though interstate and intrastate conflict often led to disregard for feudal customs, respect for the Ji family, and solidarity with other Zhou peoples. The king's prestige legitimized the military leaders of the states. and helped mobilize collective defense of Zhou territory against barbarians. Over the next 2 centuries, the 4 most powerful states, Qin, Jin, Qi and Chu, struggled for power. These multi-city states often used the pretext of aid and protection to intervene and gain suzerainty over the smaller states. During this rapid expansion, interstate relations alternated between low-level warfare and complex diplomacy. Zheng falls out with the court. Duke Yin of Liu ascended the throne in 722 BC. From this year on, the state of Liu kept an official chronicle, the Spring and Autumn Annals, which along with its commentaries is the standard source for the Spring and Autumn period. Corresponding chronicles are known to have existed in other states as well, but all but the Liu chronicle have been lost. In 717 BC, Duke Zhuang of Zheng went to the capital for an audience with King Wan. During the encounter, the duke felt he was not treated with the respect and etiquette which would have been appropriate, given that Zheng was now the chief protector of the capital. In 715 BC, Zheng also became involved in a border dispute with Liu regarding the fields of Zhu. The fields had been put in the care of Liu by the king for the exclusive purpose of producing royal sacrifices for the sacred Mount Tai. Zheng regarding the fields as just any other piece of land was an insult to the court. By 707 BC, relations had soured enough that the king launched a punitive expedition against Zheng. The duke counterattacked and raided Zhou territory, defeating the royal forces in the Battle of Zhuge and injuring the king himself. Zheng was the first vassal to openly defy the king, kicking off the centuries of warfare without respect for titles which would characterize the period. The display of Zheng's martial strength was effective until succession problems after Zhuang's death weakened the state. In 692 BC, there was a failed assassination attempt against King Zhuang, orchestrated by elements at court. The 5 hegemons. Hegemony of Qi. The first hegemon was Duke Wan of Qi. With the help of his prime minister, Guanzhong, Duke Wan reformed Qi to centralize its power structure. The state consisted of 15 townships, with the duke and 2 senior ministers each in charge of 5. Military functions were also united with civil ones. These and related reforms provided the state, already powerful from control of trade crossroads, with a greater ability to mobilize resources than the more loosely organized states. By 667 BC, Qi had clearly shown its economic and military predominance, and Duke Wan assembled the leaders of Liu, Song, Chen, and Zheng, who elected him as their leader. Soon after, King Hui of Zhou conferred the title of Ba, giving Duke Wan royal authority in military ventures. An important basis for justifying Qi's dominance over the other states was presented in the slogan, supporting the king and expelling the barbarians. The role of subsequent hegemons would also be framed in this way. As the primary defender and supporter of nominal Zhou authority in the existing order, using this authority, Duke Wan intervened in a power struggle in Liu, protected Yan from encroaching western Rong nomads, drove off northern Dai nomads after they'd invaded Wei and Xing, providing the people with provisions and protective garrison units, and led an alliance of 8 states to conquer Qi and thereby block the northward expansion of Chu. At his death in 643 BC, 5 of Duke Wan's sons contended for the throne, badly weakening the state so that it was no longer regarded as the hegemon. For nearly 10 years, no ruler held the title. Hegemony of Song. Duke Xiang of Song attempted to claim the hegemony in the wake of Qi's decline, perhaps driven by a desire to restore the Shang dynasty from which Song had descended. He hosted peace conferences in the same style as Qi had done, and conducted aggressive military campaigns against his rivals. Duke Xiang, however, met his end when, against the advice of his staff, he attacked the much larger state of Chu. The Song forces were defeated at the Battle of Hong in 638 BC, and the duke himself died in the following year from an injury sustained in the battle. After Zhang's death, his successors adopted a more modest foreign policy, better suited to the country's small size. As Duke Xiang was never officially recognized as hegemon by the king of Zhou, not all sources list him as one of the 5 hegemons. Hegemony of Jin. When Duke Wen of Jin came to power in 636 BC, he capitalized on the reforms of his father, Duke Xian, who had centralized the state, killed off relatives who might threaten his authority, conquered 16 smaller states, and even absorbed some Rong and Dai peoples to make Jin much more powerful than it had been previously. When he assisted King Xiang in a succession struggle in 635 BC, Xiang awarded Jin with strategically valuable territory near Chengzhou. Duke Wen of Jin then used his growing power to coordinate a military response with Qi, Qin, and Song against Chu, which had begun encroaching northward after the death of Duke Wan of Qi, with a decisive Chu loss at the Battle of Chengpu. Duke Wen's loyalty to the Zhou king was rewarded at an interstate conference when King Xiang awarded him the title of Ba. After the death of Duke Wen in 628 BC, a growing tension manifested in interstate violence that turned smaller states, particularly those at the border between Jin and Chu, into sites of constant warfare. Qi and Qin also engaged in numerous interstate skirmishes with Jin or its allies to boost their own power. Hegemony of Qin. Duke Mu of Qin had ascended the throne in 659 BC and forged an alliance with Jin by marrying his daughter to Duke Wen. In 624 BC, he established hegemony over the Western Rong barbarians and became the most powerful lord of the time. However, he did not share any alliance with other states, nor was he officially recognized as hegemon by the king. Therefore, not all sources accept him as one of the 5 hegemons. Hegemony of Chu. King Zhuang of Chu expanded the borders of Chu well north of the Yangtze River, threatening the central states in modern Henan. At one point the Chu forces advanced to just outside the royal capital of Zhou, upon which King Zhuang sent a messenger to ask how heavy and bulky the 9 cauldrons were, implying he might soon arrange to have them moved to his own capital. In the end the Zhou capital was spared, and Chu shifted focus to harassing the nearby state of Zheng. The once hegemon state of Jin intervened to rescue Zheng from the Chu invaders but were resolutely defeated, which marks the ascension of Chu as the dominant state of the time. Despite his de facto hegemony, King Zhuang's self-proclaimed title of king was never recognized by the Zhou states. In the Spring and Autumn Annals he is defiantly referred to by the Chu ruler's original title, Viscount, even at a time when he dominated most of South China. Later historians, however, always include him as one of the 5 hegemons. Late Spring and Autumn. Ministers seized power. In addition to conflicts between states, internal conflicts between state leaders and local aristocrats also occurred. Eventually the dukes of Lu, Jin, Zheng, Wei and Qi would all become figureheads to powerful aristocratic families. In the case of Jin, the shift happened in 588 BC when the army was split into 6 independent divisions, each dominated by a separate noble family: the Zhao, Wei, Han, Ji, Fan and Zhongxing. The heads of the 6 families were given the ranks of viscounts and made ministers, presumably each heading one of the 6 departments of a Zhou dynasty government. From this point on, historians talk of the 6 ministers as the true power in Jin. The heads of the 3 families were always among the department heads of Lu. Rise of Wu. Wu was a barbarian state in modern Jiangsu, where the inhabitants sported short hair and tattoos. Although legend ascribed a Chinese origin to the ruling dynasty, Wu did not participate in the politics and wars of China until the last third of the Spring and Autumn period. Their first documented interaction with the Spring and Autumn states was in 584 BC, when a Wu force attacked the small border state of Tan, causing some alarm in the various Chinese courts. Jin was quick to dispatch an ambassador to the court of the Wu king, Shoumeng. Jin promised to supply Wu with modern military technology and training in exchange for an alliance against Chu, a neighbor of Wu and Jin's nemesis in the struggle for hegemony. King Shomeng accepted the offer, and Wu would continue to harass Chu for years to come. Attempts at peace after a period of increasingly exhausting warfare. Qi, Qin, Jin and Chu met at a disarmament conference in 579 BC and agreed to declare a truce to limit their military strength. This peace didn't last very long, and it soon became apparent that the bar role had become outdated. The four major states had each acquired their own spheres of control, and the notion of protecting Zhou territory had become less cogent as the control over non-Zhou peoples, as well as Chu's control of some Zhou areas, further blurred an already vague distinction between Zhou and non-Zhou. In addition, new aristocratic houses were founded with loyalties to powerful states, rather than directly to the Zhou kings. Though this process slowed down by the end of the 7th century BC, possibly because territory available for expansion had been largely exhausted. The Zhou kings had also lost much of their prestige, so that, when dukedom of Jin was recognized as Ba, it carried much less meaning than it had before. Hegemony of Wu. In 506 BC, King Helu ascended the throne of Wu. With the help of Wu's Ixan son Zi, the author of The Art of War, he launched major offensives against the state of Chu. They prevailed in 5 battles, one of which was the Battle of Boju, and conquered the capital Ying. However, Chu managed to ask the state of Qin for help, and after being defeated by Qin, the vanguard general of Wu troops, Fu Gai, a younger brother of Helu, led a rebellion. After beating Fu Gai, Helu was forced to leave Chu. Fu Gai later retired to Chu and settled there. King Helu died during an invasion of Yu in 496 BC. Some sources list him as one of the 5 hegemons. He was succeeded by his son King Fuai of Wu, who nearly destroyed the Yu state, imprisoning King Guzhan of Yu. Subsequently, Fuai defeated Qi and extended Wu influence into central China. In 499 BC, the philosopher Confucius was made acting prime minister of Lu. He is traditionally considered the author or editor of the Spring and Autumn Annals, from which much of the information for this period is drawn. After only 2 years he was forced to resign and spent many years wandering between different states before returning to Lu. After returning to Lu, he did not resume a political career, preferring to teach. Tradition holds that it was in this time he edited or wrote the 5 classics, including the Spring and Autumn. Hegemony of Yu. In 482 BC, King Fuai of Wu held an interstate conference to solidify his power base, but Yu captured the Wu capital. Fuai rushed back, but was besieged and died when the city fell in 473 BC. Yu then concentrated on weaker neighboring states, rather than the great powers to the north. With help from Wu's enemy Chu, Yu was able to be victorious after several decades of conflict. King Guzhan destroyed and annexed Wu in 473 BC. In some sources he is considered the last of the 5 hegemons. The year 479 BC, in which Confucius died, marks the end of the Spring and Autumn Chronicle. Later events are however included in the Zhao commentary as an epilogue. Partition of Jin. After the Great Age of Jin power, the Jin dukes began to lose authority over their nobles. A full-scale civil war between 497 and 453 BC ended with the elimination of most noble lines. The remaining aristocratic families divided Jin into 3 successor states: Han, Wei, and Zhao. This is the last event recorded in the Zhao commentary. With the absorption of most of the smaller states in their era, this partitioning left 7 major states in the Zhou world. The 3 fragments are Jin, the 3 remaining great powers of Qin, Chu and Qi, and the weaker state of Yun near modern Beijing. The partition of Jin, along with the usurpation of Qi by Tian, marks the beginning of the Warring States period. List of states. This list is incomplete. You can help by expanding it. A total of 148 states are mentioned in the chronicles for this period. Important figures. The 5 hegemons. Traditional history lists 5 hegemons during the Spring and Autumn period. Duke Wan of Qi, Duke Xiang of Song, Duke Wen of Jin, Duke Mu of Qin, King Zhuang of Chu. Alternatively, Duke Wan of Qi, Duke Wen of Jin, King Zhuang of Chu, King Fuai of Wu, King Guzhen of Yu. Bureaucrats or officers: Guanzhong, advisor of Duke Wan of Qi; Bailey Shi, Prime Minister of Qin; Wu Zixi, Duke of Shen, an important advisor of King Helu; Bo Pai, bureaucrat under King Helu who played an important diplomatic role in Wu-Yu relations; Wenzhong and Fan Li, the two advisors of King Guzhen of Yu in his war against Wu; Zichan, leader of self-strengthening movements in Zheng; influential scholars Confucius or Kongzi, leading figure in Confucianism; Lao Tzu or Lao Zhe, teacher of Daoism; Mo Tzu or Mencius, founder of Mohism; Sun Tzu or Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War; other people: Liu Ban, Liao Li, sent by King Helu to kill King Ji; Zhuan Zhu, sent by Helu to kill his cousin King Liao; Boya. Interstate Relations. Ancient sources such as the Zhao Duan and the eponymous Chunqiu record the various diplomatic activities, such as court visits paid by one ruler to another, meetings of officials or nobles of different states, missions of friendly inquiries sent by the ruler of one state to another, emissaries sent from one state to another, and hunting parties attended by representatives of different states. Because of Chu's non-Zhou origin, the state was considered semi-barbarian, and its rulers, beginning with King Wu in 704 BC, proclaimed themselves kings in their own right. Chu intrusion into Zhou territory was checked several times by the other states, particularly in the major battles of Chengpu, Bai and Yanling, which restored the state to Chen and Kai.